let's see, how do you say this without being obnoxious? I really dislike most florals on the market. I've been geeking out on DIY florals for years now. Growing my own flowers, foraging, sourcing cut flowers. I'm gonna share all of my culled sources, inspiration, and techniques so that you too can make DIY budget florals that actually look good. I'm Teresa with Good Helen, and this is floral design from a creative's perspective. First, we'll talk about containers. I keep a stock of jam jars for smaller arrangements. My husband loves peanut butter. We have huge Adams peanut butter jars that I stash in a cupboard. I have plenty of vases that I've collected over the years from thrift stores, antique stores. Friends give me things they've made. You can use anything really. I love using bowls. If anyone's interested, I'm happy to go over. I'd love to make another video and go over the architecture that you use for bowls, chicken wire, and floral tape, frogs, things like that. Happy to do that another time. But for today, we're just doing a traditional vessel, which supports the length of the stem really nicely and doesn't need much architecture. You kind of just pop everything in there. Let's see, tools. My favorite snips. I've gone to the trouble of buying the knockoff version and the real thing from Japan. Both are available on Amazon. I have saved you the trouble of testing that yourself. Go ahead and skip the cheap knockoff, which is absolutely useless. This is the Sakagen. Anyway, I'll link it. These are a favorite of many florists. I learned about them from Willow Crossley, who I follow and love. She does a video on Sundays on Instagram. I recommend. It's adorable. She's lovely. For cutting foliage that's larger or branches, I love Velcro pruners. They can be sharpened and last forever if you don't let them rust, which I sometimes do, and then I have to buy parts. And anyway, they're durable, they're wonderful. I grew up with them, and I don't know, something about good tools is very satisfying. So you always want your vessels, any container that you're using, to be really, really clean, free of bacteria. Give it a good scrub with soap before you use it, or after you've finished using it, before you store it. It helps your flowers stay fresh longer and bloom well. Nice clean water in a container, and we can get right to it. I've been to TJ's this morning. The selection was great. It's early spring and the flowers are coming back in. I am a recovering chromophobe, so I used to heavily shy from color, but I'm trying to branch out and embrace it, and it really does bring joy sometimes when I'm in the mood, especially after a really gray winter here in the Pacific Northwest. It can just be cheering to have something tastefully bright. Or maybe garish, we'll see. Maybe we'll do a garish one of these days too. So I'll run through what I've purchased. I have here just a really beautiful peony tulip. It's got great color, yellow through orange, and as it blooms, it goes back into more of a yellow color. Certain flowers, even at a grocery store, you go early for. I mean, if you're in New York, if you're at a flower market, a proper flower market, you know to go as early as possible, 6 a.m., 7 a.m. The good things really do sell out. People know it's wonderful. At Trader Joe's, if you go in the morning, you have a good chance of getting something that's just been put out, like a peony tulip. If you go in the afternoon, you might not be so lucky. They may be sold out. As I said, I went at 10. They had a small selection. They had hundreds and hundreds of little bundles of standard tulips and other flowers, but the really special ones can be harder to come by. I got a small thing of Ranunculus. I think these were $6.99. They've got a great kind of veining in them, and we've got an almost white one and some darker sort of fuchsias in here. And the hyacinth here is really sweet. There's a sort of unusual color that they've been having at Trader Joe's recently, this sort of blush pink that's kind of twinged with yellows and greens when it's closed, and then when it opens it goes into a more a more standard pink. And I happened to pick up some branches, what do we call them? Cherry blossom branches. They're pink. They're gonna be so pretty. They'll probably become more white as they open. And here's the hot tip of the video. It's really all about the foliage. The difference for me between a sort of really average, uninspired arrangement and one that really gets me kind of weak in the knees. I don't know. I mean, I really love flowers. Is foliage. And I rarely buy foliage because as a rule, you want to use about 70% of your overall arrangement should be foliage. And that's a lot of foliage to be buying, even at Trader Joe's. This I picked up down the street. A neighbor had a down limb, and I'd been admiring their tree since I moved to the neighborhood, and they happened to lose a branch. Last winter, the same thing happened. A lot of limbs went down during a snowstorm, and there were some limbs that had just started to leaf out and blossom, and it's a really incredible opportunity for grabbing some great branches that might not be available otherwise. It was clear that they were destined for disposal, so I did not bother checking in to see if it was okay to take them. That would be great if you feel more comfortable doing that first. I also am curious what kind of tree it is. I don't recognize it. It looks a bit like an olive in color and leaf shape, but it is not an olive as far as I can tell. If you know, please let me know in the comments if you recognize this tree. I love to have the foliage and the overall arrangement be, just in terms of volume, to have the vase be about 1/3 of the overall arrangement and the foliage to go up 2/3 higher. And then just some other basics. I don't love symmetry in florals. I have to check in with myself as I go to make sure that I'm getting shapes that do something a little more interesting. I just find that really pleasing when it's on a table or on a mantelpiece or wherever it is in the room. There's so much to look at when there's a lot of movement in an arrangement. When it's just a simple shape, your eye is not drawn to stay on it. It's more like a pop of color or an accent rather than something that you're actually interested in gazing upon. These are quite straight branches that I have from Trader Joe's. We'll see if we can dot a few in, and I think we'll start with those because they're a bit twiggy. Anything that's being submerged in the water, I'm gonna wanna remove. This just invites bacteria. Cut the end, and anything with a woody stem, you're gonna wanna also cut up this one's about a little over 1/2 inch, so these guys will do a woody stem really quite easily. But this is a bit thick. So you're gonna wanna cut up the stem a couple of times. This helps rehydrate, helps the branch get as much water as possible out to the ends. I think we might make this one work. This one has a nice curve. Let's see if we can find a couple more. If it's not a nice combination, we can always just yank them. Not hard to start over. So we're just building a kind of a crosshatch architecture here. The flowers will sit in, and overall I'm just checking, really trying to avoid that natural inclination to create symmetry. I mean, even though I know I prefer an arrangement that is not symmetrical, it just starts to happen like automatically, and really just trying to retrain myself. So here we have our overall arrangement, the shape of it at least. This one's actually bugging me a bit. I might trim it down a little shorter. Oh, of course it's 2. It's 2. We're gonna cheat. We'll get in there low. I'll get it trimmed again. I'll make it a little shorter. Which is a great segue to talking about the addition of our florals. The kind of only key thing that I try to keep in mind when arranging the flowers into the foliage is just to vary the height. Another sort of knee-jerk tendency is to make things quite even in height and kind of, spacing. odd numbers are also sort of a rule of thumb. When the arrangement is this big and wild and unruly, sometimes you can get away with an even number because it's sort of from side to side, you can't really quite spot the total number. It may not be as big a deal, but might as well try for it. So here we go. I think I'll start with the orange. I think it's gonna pop the most. So I've done a sort of mid-height one. We'll see if we can get one. See if we have any tall ones here. Here's a really tall one. See if we can get a tall one in and a really low one. Get the diversity of height going. I love this kind of thing too when they shoot off along a branch. It just feels like it's almost in the forest. It's just so nice. Oh, this tall guy didn't even make it into the vase. Getting closer. The hyacinths. Honestly, we really don't need them, but it's getting great, so let's keep going. We haven't got a ton of space left. This is a narrow-necked vase, so I'm losing most of the foliage on the hyacinth, just so we can get a few of them in there. It's a really different form. The Peony Tulips and the Ranunculus have a similar sort of shape, so it's nice to get in something different. Oh, last tip, reflexing the tulips. They do this on their own, but if you want to get a head start, you can just gently coax a few petals out by pressing your finger at the back of them. All right, I think we've made it. Excited to see what you think. Please leave notes in the comments, subscribe. I'll have lots of additional videos coming along. I've made myself a deal to make a certain number of videos. Hopefully I'll be publishing them regularly. A lot of home projects coming up. As I said, we've just moved into this house and I'm doing a lot of DIY, so stay tuned. Really excited to share the things that I have learned how to do, and I learned a lot on YouTube, so happy to bring it back.